Okay, good morning. I hope everyone can hear me. Welcome to this training on preparation of the concept note. So this is a two-day training and the training has been organized by the project that is funded by the VIII program for the Turkish Cypriot community, and implemented by NIRAS Consortium, and I am the non-key expert responsible for delivering of these trainings and for help desk
του
support.
εκπαιδευτικού σεμιναρίου. Ίσως
Hem de bu eğitimlerin düzenlenmesinde sizlere destek.
Today and tomorrow, my name is Ivana Stalietovic, and of course you will have all the information available, how to contact us additionally, the email that you could write to, and also you will receive these materials on the emails that you are currently writing on the chat. Thank you for that. Thank you for joining. So just some technical issues with regards to logistics. So your microphone, you notice that your microphones are muted and your cameras are turned off just in order to maintain the stable internet. You can choose interpretation. We have interpretation in Greek and Turkish available. So you just click the interpretation button and you choose the language and you enter the room where you can hear the translation. For asking questions, you will have to use this chat option that you already recognized. And we encourage you, if it is possible, to ask questions and write them in English in order to, to speed up the process of translation. We will try to answer all the questions that you will write immediately after one session, let's say. It will not stay until the end not answered. So you will see, we already had a training for lot 1 and it was it was good like that. So we will answer your questions, maybe not immediately, but very soon after one session, a relevant session finish. Okay, so the training is recorded. You will receive the video. It will be available also to others through the web page, and we can move on. So just to mention, to stress that it is very important to say that we, from GST team, we are not officially the contracting authority, and we are not representing not necessarily the opinion of the contracting authority. So please refer to the guidelines for applicants that are published, and refer to questions and answers that will be also published by the contracting authority for any specific issues. You will see later on where and how and until when you can ask official questions. Okay, so with regards to the agenda, I already mentioned we will not stick exactly to this time frame. We will see, depending on the number of questions for each session that you might have, and we will adjust, and probably we will have more but shorter breaks, 2 or maybe 3, it depends. So on the first day, we will have a general information about the call, then some important elements for the preparation of proposals, and for the budgeting, to understand the co-financing requirements, preparing budget estimates. We have also prepared a quiz, which consists of 15 questions to see how you have understood, and you will be able to see later on your results and which answers are correct or wrong. And on the second day, we will focus on the preparation of the concept note. But at first, we will have a session, very useful session that I'm really inviting you. It was not envisaged in the agenda, but we added it because it's really important for you, how to register in PADR and upload the proposal later on in Prospect. It will be supported and held by our colleague expert Nilay. And tomorrow morning, when we start at 10, then she will first have this session. So please join us for sure in the morning. And guidelines will be also shared, which can bring you closer, and that those guidelines are leading you step by step how to register and how to upload later on. And then we will focus on the preparation of the concept note, which are the elements of the concept note, and then later on how your concept notes are assessed on the basis of which quality elements and how they are scored. And you will see more in details how the evaluators or assessors are basically reviewing your concept note on the basis of which questions. And then shortly we will have just some information what follows if you really pass hopefully the concept note phase, and what if you will be granted to sign the grant contract, and what follows next. So, you know, to keep in mind all the relevant elements. At first, our recommendation would certainly be to read the guidance for applicants very carefully. If you maybe haven't already downloaded, on the later slides, you will see the links on which you can download the whole set of the call. Certainly in those guidelines, you may find all the relevant information about the call and how to apply and all the specifics of this call. And you will probably find all your answers there if you read carefully. In those documents, you will see also documents and templates for the preparation of your proposals, but we will go through that as well. So let's go on the introduction of the call for proposals. Maybe some of you have already participated on the info sessions, so you are aware of these rules and what is basically the purpose of the call. But we will go briefly through that again for the ones who maybe haven't participated on previous info sessions. So the call is published on the 1st of March this year. This is the reference number that is appointed when the call is published. So, but you will have the link, so you don't need to take care. Deadline for submission is 19th of April at 3 p.m. Brussels date and time, but Cyprus time it's 4 p.m. So don't be late. For sure, it is even recommended to prepare and upload your application and your concept note earlier, not to wait even the last day, and certainly not to wait for the last hour, because, you know, if something goes wrong and if you will not be able to upload it timely, then your proposal will not be considered. So we would certainly advise you, this is the latest date that you can submit it, even much earlier it is allowed. So obligatory under this call is online submission to Prospect. So for those who don't have experience, please join us tomorrow morning, and then we will reply on all your questions with regards to that. So we will focus on that tomorrow. And what is also recommended, to register in PADR earlier, so well in advance, when you are already aware that you will apply for this call. So please do this registration well in advance, as soon as possible. So with regards to submission process, we are now in the concept note stage. So it's step 1. We will have more details later, but if you pass this step 1, then the second step is the full application, so-called full application stage, where you will have to prepare a big proposal in line with the templates, with other supporting documents such as log frame matrix, budget, and so on. But for now, you are only submitting the concept note. Okay, so here are the links. Here are the links for the call. Maybe we can take a look jointly, just to see. I cannot open it now. Just 1 second. Okay. Sorry. So just to share this link. Okay, I was thinking to go jointly, just to bring you closer to the documentation that is available on this link. So this is Cypriot Civil Society Call in Action 8. It's open. Here are the information, when it is published, when it was updated, and the budget for the whole call with the reference number. So with regards to the documents, I would certainly advise you to download the latest version of the guidelines, which is called Corrigendum. So only one change has been done in comparison to initially published guidelines, and that was the deadline, which was due to some holiday in Brussels. It was postponed for a couple of days. So the final deadline is 19th of April. So this is basically the one change in Corrigendum, but anyhow, when we are replying on your questions and answers, when they will be published by the contracting authority, when in answers we refer to the number of page where you may find additional information in the guidelines, then it is better to have this latest version of the Corrigendum. Okay, then what is important at this stage is Annex A1, grant application form concept note. So you will have to follow this template clearly and carefully. You have some instructions there. We will go in more details through the concept note template itself. And then you have this Annex A2, which is grant application form full application, which basically is not so relevant at this stage. It will certainly be relevant if you will be invited to submit the full application, but I advise you, to take a look on all these documents, to see what waits for you if you don't have previous experience. So for you to be aware what you will have to prepare if you will be invited, apart from the fact that you will need to prepare the full application, which is much more comprehensive than the concept note itself, because the concept note has 5 pages maximum. There is Annex B, budget in Excel. So there is a sheet for the budget. There is a sheet for justification of the budget and sources of funding. So there are 3 sheets. So please take a look also into that template. And Annex C, it's a logical framework matrix that you will also need to prepare and submit. And some of these documents you might already use in this stage, to calculate properly the budget, for example, and you know, to prepare, even to prepare or start preparing to have an intervention logic in the logical framework matrix, that you can propose the adequate activities, outputs, and results. Then we have these annexes, legal entity sheet, financial identification form, but these are the documents that you will have to submit in the later stage, not now. What I would advise you to download this Annex G, which is standard grant contract, all the annexes of your future grant contract if you will be selected. So this is special conditions, and in the grant contract annexes there are general conditions and other relevant information that you will need to be very well informed about when you start the grant contract implementation. So in order to be informed what is waiting for you, certainly it will be good to take a look at these documents as well. Okay, so this is basically the most important one. So, but now just focus on Annex A1, concept note template. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, I already explained what are all these documents on that link. Okay, so all this information that you need to know are set forth in the guidelines for applicants. They include objectives of the program, priorities and themes which will be funded, eligibility rules, very important part, selection and award criteria for the later stage, and procedures to be followed by applicants together with application form templates and other annexes. What is also relevant, that this call is divided in 3 lots, and today we are focusing mostly on the specifics of lot 2, even though most of the materials that we will go through today are relevant for other lots as well, general ones. Okay. So the overall indicative amount which is available under this call is 2.5 million euros. But it is divided in 3 lots, as I already mentioned, and you may see in the table here the allocation per lot. And for lot 2, be communal confidence building actions, it is allocated 1 million. But please note that the contracting authority reserves the right not to award all the available funds if there is not enough good quality proposals. But on the other hand, what is also possible, it is possible to reallocate from one lot to another lot. For example, if under lot 3, when the selection process will be over and not all the funds allocated for this lot, this 1 million, if not all the funds will be dispersed, in that sense, the contracting authority can decide to reallocate the remaining funds, maybe in lot 2, if there are more good quality proposals. So it is in everyone's interest for all these funds to be disbursed and contracted. But good quality proposals need to arrive, that's for sure. Okay, so the global objective of the whole call is to support civil society in enhancing trust, dialogue, and cooperation, and in promoting European Union values and standards through actions that contribute to promoting reunification of Cyprus. So the specific objective, which defines more precisely this objective of the lot 2, is to promote dialogue and collaboration among the Cypriot communities via confidence building measures and joint actions which are organized by civil society organizations across the divide. So this is the specific objective that your proposal should refer to. Also, the priorities, more specific priorities for this lot 2 are actions which are designed to bring together the Cypriot communities around island-wide issues which are related to either environment, peace, reconciliation, trust building, human rights, culture, and or sport. So it can be a combination of these topics or priorities or one of them that you should refer to. So please take that into consideration when you're thinking about your project and how could you contribute and why your project is relevant for lot 2. It is very important to be relevant for the lot that you're applying to. Okay, then we have this themes that you should refer to. So basically the actions should increase bi-communal interaction between the Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot communities. So this is the basic line. But the project that you propose under this slot shall be centered around the following topics. So there are 4 topics: environment, peace, reconciliation, trust building, human rights, culture, and or sports. For the environment, it is important to address the actions that are specifically designed to bring together the Cypriot communities around island-wide issues related to environment, including but not limited to climate crisis, natural resources, waste, biodiversity, and health-related environmental issues. So you are not limited basically with these themes, topics, but this is to kind of give you guidance where you should focus and address to. For the peace, reconciliation, and trust building, you need to propose actions that are specifically designed to bring together Cypriot communities around island-wide issues, but this time related to promotion of peace, reconciliation, or trust building. So again, for the human rights, the purpose is to design an action that will bring together the Cypriot communities around island-wide issues related to human rights, including but not limited to protection and promotion of vulnerable groups. Although projects should specifically take into account their impact on women and youth, projects specifically targeting women and young people will be welcomed, as well as projects supporting social inclusion. So it is not strictly related to this topic. And for the culture and sports, you need to address the actions that are, again, specifically designed to bring together the 2 communities, and in particular, children and youth around common interest in the fields of okay. So what are also important, which are also important details for this lot 2, that you should propose a grant, and the amount of the grant must fall between the minimum and maximum amounts. So the minimum amount for lot 2 is 50,000 euros, and the maximum amount is 200,000 euros. So it should not be minimum or maximum. It can be, but it can be any amount in between. And please just take into consideration that the grant that you're requesting is not the total budget of the project, but EU contribution part of the budget. So EU contribution part of the budget can minimally be, the percentage could minimum be 60% and maximum 95% of the total budget for your project. So the total budget of your project consists of EU contribution and your own contribution. Your own contribution should be at least 5% up to 40%. So please abide strictly to these provisions and rules, because if you're not following this, what is prescribed here when you're proposing your project, you will be non-administratively compliant. So please, please make sure that you follow very strictly these rules. Also, with regards to the planned duration, take note that the action or the project that you are proposing may not be lower than 12 months and should not exceed 36 months. So between 1 year and 3 years. It can be 12 months, it can be 15 months, 22, 24, 32, you know, whatever duration you feel that your project should last, and depending on the number of activities, the value, and so on. But just be careful not to go below or beyond these thresholds. All actions should take place in Cyprus. So it considers the island as a whole. So our action should take place here. A part of the action or some activities that you are proposing may take somewhere abroad, but basically the purpose of the action should be placed here. I think it's reasonable and logical. What is also stipulated in the guidelines and should be stressed, that for all actions and for all lots, you should be complementary to or supporting the other actions which are currently implementing with EU funding in the Turkish Cypriot community in the respective sector, and should be in line with the strategy which is currently implemented by the EU in this sector. So you should take into account the EU funding, what are the projects that are currently implementing in the sector, in the respective sector that you want to apply. It is good to consult the annual reports on the implementation of the aid regulation for the Turkish Cypriot community. And you have this link here. So you should certainly open the annual report and try to refer your action and to ensure complementarity to the extent possible. So you need to show, even in this first phase of concept note, that you are aware of other actions that are currently implementing or in the respective sector, and then you need to be complementary. You should not duplicate your activities. You should build the current actions, and you should be aware of what is happening in the sector that you are planning to cover. Because this requirement will be verified during the concept note evaluation. So it will be taken into account. So you have the obligation to ensure the complementarity to the extent possible. So take this into consideration. So we have, under this grant scheme, we have some value added elements, which are also very important. They will also be evaluated. They are not obligatory to say that your action will refer and have these value added elements. But on the other hand, certainly it would be advisable for you to gain more points on the evaluation to try to include these value added elements into your actions. So I will go through them. You should reach out to and or be implemented in the remote areas and or with marginalized or minority groups. So it is either and or. So it's not obligatory to have both remote areas and marginalized or minority groups. Your actions should promote synergy in research and or development. They should promote networks or platforms with other CSOs. Your actions should incorporate capacity building of CSOs, right-based approach, gender perspectives, social inclusion, and sustainable development goals. Your actions should foster collaboration and dialogue between the Cypriot communities. And for lot 2 and 3 in particular, not for lot 1 is not applicable because financial support to third parties is not allowed under lot 1, but you will see later on what does it mean. But these actions that propose this financing to third parties or actions in which the lead applicant is acting with a co-applicant that has not previously benefited from Cypriot civil society in Action 6 or Action 7 grant schemes. So the predecessor grant schemes to this one, which is number 8. So if you are collaborating with a co-applicant that has not gained any grant previously in Action 6 or 7, then it will be also considered as added value. And if you will have this financing to third parties, but we will go later on in details, what does it mean? So these are 6 added value elements that it would be, it's not obligatory, but you should try to refer any of to any of these in order to receive more points during the evaluation. Okay, we will go to these 3 sets of eligibility criteria, and then most probably we will reply to your questions that you certainly already have. So what does it mean? Eligibility criteria. Are you eligible? Are your actions eligible? Are your budget, are the costs that you're proposing eligible? So this is very important to know. So we will go through each of these. So the eligibility criteria for the actors. The actors are the lead applicant, is the one who is proposing the action, submitting the application form, or in this case, submitting the concept note. In this call, you will have to, in this lot, you will have to have co-applicant, at least one. So these are also actors. And if you have any affiliated entities to the lead applicant or to the co-applicant, so these are all actors. Eligibility criteria, another set is related to the actions. So the actions and activities for which a grant may be awarded. And the last, but also very important, are the costs. You should be aware of the costs that are eligible for financing in order to take them into account when you will seek for the amount of the grant. You need to calculate it properly because you will be able to make some changes. We have it later on, but let's just say that you will be able to change up to 20% of the total budget that you have proposed in the concept note phase and later on. So try to be precise as possible. at this stage already. So with regards to eligibility of applicants, which is defined under point 211, if somebody wants to say something? No? Okay. Under point 211, we have eligibility of applicants. So in order for you to know that your application or concept note will be considered, you need to take into account this cumulative eligibility criteria. So you at first need to be a legal person, and you will have to prove it. So you should be a legal person, and you should be non-profit making, because profit is not allowed under EU grants. So this is one of the criteria for sure. You need to be also a civil society organization. And somebody has a microphone on. I don't know if maybe you can hear me, so turn the microphone off just not to disturb the other participants. So be non-profit making, be a civil society organization, and be registered in Cyprus. What does it mean? In the footnote, it is written that Cyprus refers to the island as a whole, so it includes Republic Cyprus and Turkish Cypriot community. So you should cumulatively satisfy all these criteria. And last one, but very important one, that you should be directly responsible for the preparation, later on management and implementation of the action with the co-applicants and affiliated entities. You should not act as an intermediary. That is very important. So you are the lead applicant, you are preparing the proposal, you are applying in the name of other co-applicants as well. You will be later on responsible, you will be the main interlocutor with the contracting authority, and you will be responsible for the implementation of the action. So certainly you cannot be an intermediary and to act with other co-applicants that will implement the activities. So you should be the main one who is responsible for that, and to manage eventually the action if you receive the grant. Then what is very important, so there are a lot of information in the footnotes, so please take into account each time when you're going through the guidelines. And if you have a footnote, don't just skip it, considering that is not so relevant because it's in the footnote. Please, in this sense, consider it as very, very relevant, because there are more information even in the footnote with some links, which are bringing you closer some terms, definitions, and so on. So for the civil society organization, what is considered eligible here under this call for the civil society organization. So the broadest possible definition has been taken into account for lot 2 and 3. It is defined here on this link, so you can take a look. But basically, the definition include membership-based, cause-based, and service-oriented civil society organizations, then community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations that bring people together in a common cause, faith-based organizations, foundations, research institutions, but not linked to university. We will have some notes later on with regards to universities. Gender and LGBT organizations, cooperatives, professional and business associations, non-for-profit media, consumer organizations, trade unions, and employers organizations. So in that sense, you can see that the definition, what is considered a civil society organization, is quite wide. And if you are one of these type of civil society organization, you certainly should be able to apply and to pass the administrative stage, where this is all checked. Okay, what about partners? So I already mentioned that under lot 2, the lead applicant, you as the lead applicant, if you are applying, you should act with co-applicants. So you should include an applicant from each of the communities of Cyprus, so Greek Cypriot and Turkish Cypriot, as either lead applicant or co-applicant. So it can be a combination. So for example, applicant can be from Greek Cypriot and co-applicant can be from Turkish Cypriot, and for sure it can be vice versa. So it's not prescribed like that, but the cooperation by communal factor should be taken into account. Co-applicants from the Turkish Cypriot or Greek Cypriot communities must satisfy the eligibility criteria as applicable to the lead applicant himself. What does it mean? The co-applicant should also satisfy all these cumulative criteria that we just passed on this slide. Of course, it is all written in the guidelines for applicants, which are much more relevant. Additional co-applicants, so you need to have minimum 1 co-applicant, but you can have more co-applicants if you consider that it is crucial and necessary and valuable for the implementation of your action. Of course, you can include more of them, and they should also satisfy the eligibility criteria as lead applicant and co-applicants, except for the one that they need to be established in Cyprus. So that third one, for example, or the second co-applicant doesn't have to necessarily be established in Cyprus. It can be, but it's not an obligation. So it can be applicants that are legally established in the member state of the European Union or on territory of a member state of the European Economic Area or on the territory of candidate countries for accession to the European Union, which are also eligible. So they take this eligibility criteria into account as well. So you may act also with affiliated entities. So these are the entities. There is a definition quite comprehensive in the guidelines for applicants, so you can take a look if you're not sure if you have affiliated entities, but these are basically the entities that are having a structural link with the applicant. So it means with the lead applicant or with co-applicant. In particular, a legal or capital link, which may be considered as affiliated entities to the lead applicant and or co-applicant. So take this definition, which is further elaborated in the guidelines, to see if you have and want to apply with some affiliated entities. And what is important to stress here, that universities or research centers which are linked to universities cannot be considered as affiliated entities. It goes the same with the associates and contractors. The important note with regards to universities or research centers applies. But on the other hand, just to bring you closer, what are the associates and contractors? So associates are other organizations or individuals which may be involved in the actions. Such associates play a real role in the action, but may not receive funding from the grant, with the exception of per diem or travel costs. So their travel costs, if they're traveling to some meetings or workshops or any other activity, and related per diem can be covered from the project budget, from the grant, but they cannot receive the actual money for implementation of activities, which is basically different for co-applicants. They will receive a part of the grant to implement the activities, in line with their responsibilities envisaged in the action, the proposal. On the other hand, for the contractors, these are the beneficiaries and their affiliated entities. Okay, so you as a beneficiary and your affiliated entities can award contracts. After you sign the grant contract, you will be able to procure some external associates which cannot be the contractors in the project. So the associates and affiliated entities that you are applying with cannot be contractors in the project. So you will be able to contract external services or to procure some supplies, equipment that are necessary for the implementation of your action. And you will have to follow the procurement rules, which are set out in Annex 4 of the standard grant contract. So that is the zip file. You may find this in the zip file where I showed you that you can download all the annexes of your future grant contract. So this Annex 4 is for this secondary, so-called secondary procurement procedures, because you are now, as the grant beneficiary, you will be able to procure some services that you might need during the implementation, and you don't have your own capacities for that. And you will be able, if there is need, to procure some supplies. What is also important to stress here, that it refers only to external services. So we will have it also later on, but it's in more detail, but it is also good to stress it now that you are applying with co-applicant, at least one, and maybe you have some affiliated entities as well and associates, and any of them cannot later on be procured or subcontracted by you. You also cannot subcontract your own staff or the staff of your co-applicant or associates and affiliated entities. But we will see later on in more details about this. Okay, so we will go through the eligible actions. So actions for which you can make an application. So these eligible actions should at first contribute to the objectives and address the priorities of the call, especially the one with regards to lot to which you are applying. And you should present them that you're contributing to these objectives and priorities in your concept note. You should meet the call's criteria, as I mentioned earlier, with regards to duration from 12 to maximum 36 months, minimum and maximum amounts that you can ask. It is between 50,000 and 200,000 euros grant part, and co-financing rate, which should be from your side at least 5% up to 40%. So you should respect the call's criteria. Your actions should take primarily in Cyprus, I already mentioned. If it is very relevant and if it is necessary, you can propose some activities to be placed in another territory or country, but it cannot constitute the major part of the action. The action should be placed here in Cyprus. So there are some examples of potential types of action that are detailed on this page 15 of the guidelines for applicants. Just to see, again, I cannot open the guidelines, but we will certainly have some questions with regards to that. So I propose that we go through these actions and activities when we will reply on the questions. So the action is composed of the set of activities. So you need to propose the action and then to propose types of activities that should be in line Your activities should be in line with these proposed types in the lot on which you're applying to. The list of activities is available on page 16 of the guidelines for applicants, and just to stress that this is not an exhaustive list. So it is indication of the activities that you could propose, but it is not exhaustive list. So any similar activities that also contribute to the priorities and the global objective of the call are also may be considered eligible for financing. And here to stress that under lot 2 and lot 3 as well, if for some of you who maybe want to apply also to lot 3, you may propose the financial support to third parties. This is even considered as an added value, as I mentioned on the previous slide, in order to help achieving the objectives of the action. So you can propose which are the third parties. That can be some civil society activists or civil society organizations, which also need to comply with that footnote where it is described, and where you can find the link who is to be considered a civil society organization, that wide definition. So they can be also third parties on your project if they will help you in achieving the objectives of the action. And it's quite new, let's say, concept. And in total, the maximum overall amount to the support to third parties per project, so per action, is 60,000 euros. On the other hand, per third party, so one third party cannot receive more than 10,000 euros. But in total, you can have more of them, but your maximum for the third party support cannot go beyond 60,000 euros. It is not considered as essential to achieve the objectives of the action. You don't necessarily have to propose this financial support to third parties, but it is certainly encouraged, and it will be additionally graded, scored in line with the evaluation grid. Okay, so these third parties again cannot be affiliated entities, neither associates nor contractors, for sure. If you are proposing this support to third parties, you should define in this section 211 of Annex A2 in the full application. So this is in the second stage, but just to know what you will have to define. So you will have to define the results which will be achieved by the financial report. You should refer to types of activities which are eligible for financial support, the types of persons or categories of persons which may receive financial support, and the criteria for selecting these entities for giving them financial support, and the criteria for determining the exact amount of financial support and the maximum amount which may be given. So you will have to strictly, so these events, the mandatory conditions which are set here have to be strictly defined in the grant contract as to avoid any exercise of discretion. So this is for the later stage, but just for you to know. As I already mentioned, these third parties should be civil society activists or CSOs as defined in this footnote number 19. Of course, all these activities that are supported to third parties should contribute also to the present call, objectives, and priorities. they should, as much as possible, be channeled to CSOs acting in the interest of specific groups and or working in distant and remote areas, and or promoting activities with multi-communal networking and or networking with CSOs based in the Republic of Cyprus. They cannot be asked to provide co-financing to the support that they are getting. So if you are covering a part that will be performed by the third party, you should cover the 100 of that action that is proposed to be handled by the third party, and they will not co-finance the action. So third parties cannot co-finance the action. Only lead applicant and co-applicants can co-finance the action. And third parties cannot get financial support to pay for co-financing obligations in another EU-funded project. So you cannot give the money to the third party in order for them to co-finance another action which is also EU-funded. So it is not eligible to cover co-financing, but to cover some activities that are eligible, that contribute to the specifics and of the lot to which you are applying, and to which contribute to the priorities and the overall objective. We have a list of ineligible actions, so the actions that cannot be proposed. And these are the actions which are concerned only or mainly with individual sponsorship for participation in workshops, seminars, conferences, and congresses. So it can be one of the activities, maybe, but it cannot be focused, to sponsor your participation only on some trainings and workshops as such. Then the actions that are concerned only or mainly with individual scholarships for studies or training courses. It can be maybe part of your activities, but if it is really relevant and necessary, but it cannot be the purpose of your action. Then the actions which duplicate other EU-funded projects or programs. That's why you need to try to explain that you are aware of other EU-funded projects or programs, what is happening there and in the sector that you're applying, and that you are building the current or previously implemented projects, and that you're not duplicating the same actions. Then the actions that are already financed in full by another donor, one-off events like conferences, roundtables, seminars that are not part of the wider action. So certainly you most probably have under your activities proposed to have some conferences or seminars or roundtables, but that should be part of a wider action, not only focused on that. And then also it is non-eligible to have research projects that have already been completed, fully funded, or are already published. So basically they should be kind of novel ideas. Then the projects in which infrastructure or works represent more than 10% of the direct eligible cost of the budget. So as I said, direct eligible cost of the budget consists of EU part.
Αποτελούνται από την συνεισφορά της ΕΕ και από τη δική σας.
For example,
Doğrudan uygun maliyetler içerisinde. Örnek vermem gerekirse 100.000 euro toplamda önerildi proje için. Yani projenizin maliyeti
spend or propose more than 10%, which is 10,000 euros in that example, for the infrastructures or for the works. So these are some adaptation works that you may propose, or you know, something that is relevant, it should be very relevant. You cannot just say that your roof is leaking and you need to fix it. You need to certainly, this infrastructure work component, you need to certainly connect it with the implementation of activities, and you need to prove that this is really important for you and for the implementation of the activities. And in that sense, you can propose it and finance, but up to 10% of the direct eligible costs. You don't have to propose it for sure. And projects in which the purchase of equipment represents more than 30% of the direct eligible cost in the budget. It applies for lot 2 and 3 as well. This percentage is a bit higher for lot 1, is up to 50%. So you can propose that you will purchase equipment up to 30% of total or direct eligible cost of your action. You don't have to propose it if it is not crucial and relevant. You need to certainly prove that procurement of this equipment is necessary for your implementation of the action. You always need to take into account the visibility component. It is very important for the EU as a donor. So you should publicize the fact that the European Union has financed or co-financed the action. So you can see this communication and visibility guidelines, which are also available on this link. So please, if you're not already informed, inform yourself about these obligations. We only have this basically very important issue to go through as well, and that is the number of proposals that can be sent and the number of grants that can be awarded. So you as the lead applicant, if you're the lead applicant, you cannot submit more than one application per lot. So, for example, you can propose more applications under the call, but not more than 3, and each of them can be only submitted under different lots. So under lot 2, in this case, you will be able as a lead applicant to submit only one application, only one concept note. The lead applicant also may not be awarded more than one grant. So even if you propose more than one project, so one project under lot 2 and maybe one project under lot 3 as a lead applicant, at the end, if both of those projects will be scored in that sense that they will be selected for the signature of the grant contract, you will not be able as a lead applicant to sign both contracts, but you will all have to choose which one of them you will sign. So you can get only one grant contract as a lead applicant. But you as a lead applicant may be a co-applicant or an affiliated entity in another application at the same time. So you can be co-applicant on another application. Co-applicant affiliated entities may be the co-applicant or affiliated entity in more than one applications under this call. So it's not the same with the lead applicant. On the other hand, co-applicants can be co-applicants on more than one applications. And also co-applicants or affiliated entities may be awarded more than one grant. But in that sense, they are not a lead applicant, they are only co-applicants acting with a lead applicant. And the last, eligibility of costs. So it is also prescribed in the section 214 of the guidance for applicants. So you need to know basically which costs you can include in order to try to envisage the correct amount of the grant that you're proposing now. Even though you're not submitting the budget, the whole budget, that is envisaged in the second stage, but now you need to basically be aware of the eligibility of costs, so that we will go through this quickly. So the eligible costs are the one which are incurred during the implementation of the action. So it means after the contract signature, where your implementation of the action starts, and during, if you have proposed 24 months for the implementation, those costs to be eligible should exist during the implementation period, official implementation period. The cost, in order to be eligible, have to be indicated in the estimated overall budget of the action. So you have the budget of the action, and you need to have all these costs envisaged in the budget in order for them to be eligible for financing. They have to be necessary for the implementation of the action, which is the subject of the grant. So your costs, you need to prove that your costs are connected with the activities that you have proposed. So you need to establish a clear connection between the activities and the costs that you will propose in the second phase. They need to be identifiable and verifiable. So the contracting authority later on should be able to verify, and you will have to submit a lot of supporting documents for all the costs that you will have incurred during the implementation. The cost needs to be reasonable. They need to be justified and comply with the requirements of sound financial management, in particular regarding the economy and efficiency. So try to act with the, when you are thinking about the budget, about the amounts, try to think in the sense that you are spending your own money, but the persons, of course, who are responsible in spending the money. So you should not try to have an advantage or something, but profit for sure, it's not allowed. But please try to be reasonable, because this is the basic for the respect of this sound financial management principle. The eligible cost may include co-financing in kind in the form of volunteers' work. We will have it on the next slide. And before the contract signature, the contracting authority may impose some modifications to address mistakes or inaccuracies, unrealistic or ineligible cost in the budget before the signing. There is a list of non-eligible costs. So please also take a look. So non-eligible costs are certainly debts and debt service charges, interests, currency exchange losses as well, provisions for losses or potential future liabilities, costs declared by beneficiaries and financed in full by another action or work program receiving a European Union, including EDF grants. Then purchases of land, it's not eligible, building or offices. And the costs which have incurred prior to the signature of the contract, they are also will not be eligible for financing. So take care that you start calculating the cost from the start of your contract after signature. Then salary cost of civil servants or the personnel of local bodies, and a rent of land, buildings and offices and works, infrastructures and renovation, refurbishment of buildings where property rights of natural and legal persons have not been respected. So this is basically related with the property rights, which should be in conformity with this article of the Council regulation. So take into account not to propose such costs which are not eligible. With regards to volunteers' work, it is also quite a new concept for the ones maybe who have who have previous experience, maybe they haven't been in contact with this term. So just to explain a bit, so the contracting authority in this sense is accepting co-financing in kind in the form of volunteers' work. So as I said, you need to co-finance your action with a minimum 5%. Out of this 5%, half of it or 50% of co-financing, up to 50%, can be covered through volunteers' work. Of course, volunteers are not paid, but you can engage in your action for certain activities, volunteers, and their work will be valorized. How it is valorized? It is defined and authorized by the European Commission. You can find it in this link, but nevertheless, we have extracted here that the amount per volunteer day for Cyprus is valorized as 78 euros. So for example, you have 10 volunteers, each of them work 10 days, and it is 100 days. It is multiplied by 78 euros. And you can say that this their work will be valorized, and you will co-finance your action up to 50% through this work. Inclusion of volunteers. It's not obligatory for sure. And if it's not relevant for your action, also you need to certainly prove that these volunteers are necessary and they will really support this part of the activities for which you are proposing their work. Okay, so thank you for listening. This is the first part of the session. So I assume that we have received some questions. So let's see if we will reply immediately or we will
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Ivana. We've received basically just 2 questions, so I'll just proceed with answering them immediately. I've been trying to invite the participants to, ask us questions if possible during your presentation. But of course, I mean, when you, like even after this session, you can ask any question that you are interested. There was a question related to the territory where the actions are to take place. I'm trying to open the guidelines so that you can actually see where to find this in the guidelines. Just a second.
Alexandra, we cannot see your screen.
Yes, I know. Okay, can you see now?
Now, yes.
Okay. Pay attention to this location of the activities. Have a look. It's page 15 of the guidelines for the applicants. I'll try to increase it a little bit so that you can see. Actions must take place in Cyprus, in the Turkish Cypriot community and in the Greek Cypriot community for lots 1 and 2, and in the Turkish Cypriot community and optionally and not central to the action in the Republic of Cyprus for lot 3. So because today is lot 2 training, if a lady, I think that asked a question here, was actually relating to lot 2 project. If you are trying to apply for lot 2 project, your actions will need to take place in both territories to answer the question. You've also asked if these if they can be virtual. Can activities be virtual? Some of the activities can be virtual. Of course, it's nowadays quite normal and possible, but it is expected that in lot 2 projects there is a bicommunal element and that the activities are taking place in the both territories. can you guide us through the concept and PADOR platforms? Yes, that's going to take place tomorrow morning. We've prepared for you a short guide on how to register in PADOR and how to register in this prospect. And tomorrow we will also discuss how to complete the concept note form. And there was a third question, like your just a kind of like a guide where you were trying to ask whether to select all 4 specific priorities of the call or only one. It's not really defined. We don't have a mathematical approach to this question. Don't try to artificially grasp all 4 specific priorities of the call, believing that this is going to lead to a higher score of your relevance of the action. It's possible that some projects are going to tackle all 4 specific priorities. It's also possible to tackle only one. There are no specific rules, you know, like we are not saying if you tackle all 4 specific priorities, you're going to receive maximum number of points. Absolutely not, quite different. I mean, you can select one. Evaluation is done kind of like non-linear, if I can say so, and then you know, all the elements of your proposal will be assessed. And as I said, sometimes people, they just believe that if they go and select all 4 specific priorities, it will have a bigger kind of like you know, like it will be assessed better, but this is not the case in this call. So only one priority can as well be selected. That were the 3 questions that we received so far. So that was quite fast to answer them. On previous training, we had quite more of these questions. But as I told you, please, if you have any questions, use this chat option to write them down. We've kind of like finalized the first part of this training, eligibility criteria, very important because, you know, like you need to pass this eligibility criteria. So this is why we discussed these things at the info sessions as well, but we just thought it's useful to go through them again, especially considering lot 2. And now I would propose that we take a 15-minute break, if that's fine with everyone, for the translators to get some rest, also for our trainer. During this break, we will keep this platform open. So, you know, like if you get any more additional questions, I can answer them after the break. We will be back then at 11:35. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back. I hope you managed to get some rest. So yes, please ask more questions if you have any time, write them down, and certainly we will try to reply on all of them. And just to stress that all these questions, also from previous trainings and info sessions that we or the contracting authority had, will be published by the contracting authority. You will see the link on the web pages where you should look at the questions and answers. Basically, it's the one where you can download the documentation of the call. So yes, let's continue now with this session, which is dedicated to the preparation of the proposals and the most important elements that you should take into consideration. For the beginning, there is just one illustration here where people talk and they said, agreed, we will fund only those proposals that we can understand. So certainly, if even though you are proposing some action in your relevant and respective sector, where you're an expert and you have your own terminology, but try to use more simpler language, construction of sentences, so that they are understandable to everyone, not only to the expert in the field, because it is not even to be expected that the evaluators and the assessors are experts in all the fields in which and all the sectors in which you might propose your action. Okay, so now we are focusing on this concept, which is called result-based management. So basically, it focuses on the results, as its name says itself. But you need certainly to have some activities that you have proposed, the assumptions that need to be satisfied, assumptions for the successful implementation of your project. You need to identify certain risk, mitigation measures, and the causes of the problem. So you should identify also the target groups and the final beneficiaries to which you are referring to when your project is referring to, and designing programs to meet design basically your action to meet the needs of the target groups and final beneficiaries. You should certainly define realistic expected results based on the appropriate analysis. So you should not overpromise. You should be very realistic in the proposal of your activities in order to achieve outputs and consequently to achieve the envisaged results, which basically contribute to the overall objective of this grant scheme. As I mentioned, you should identify the risk and you should propose the mitigation measures. How will you manage this risk, which are out of your control? But you need to show that you're aware of the potential risks that might infringe or hinder your action. But you need to be aware of them and to propose what will you do if such risk occur in reality. So you need to propose the mitigation measures. You should monitor, you will have to monitor progress towards the results with the use of appropriate indicators. So indicators are basically measurement of your achievement. You will see later on. You should increase knowledge by learning lessons and integrating them into decisions, and you should report on the results achieved and the resources that you have involved in the achievement of those results. I would like to draw your attention on the difference between project cycle management or activity-based approach, which was more common in earlier years. But now, there is a certain period of time already where the EU is focusing more on this result-based approach. So I will just briefly explain the difference. So basically the title says itself that there is a different focus. So the activity-based approach is focusing on the activities itself, and the result-based approach is mainly focusing on the results. Why is that? Because you should not create jobs and stay busy, just to act, to work, but you need to focus on the real objects and the goals, because if you only work, and you implement some activities, that does not necessarily mean that you will actually achieve the results. So that is the main difference. Okay, to implement the activities, you need to work, you need to have a certain set of activities, but you should focus in measurement of the achievement of the results that you have envisaged through indicators. You will have to specify those indicators. So basically, the result-based management is project cycle management done right, or activity-based approach done right. Why is that? It provides more tools and directives on what should be done to ensure that project design is performed in a participatory way, and to make sure that one takes into consideration assumptions and a risk as well. So this in the table, you can see a very simple comparison where you should focus. Of course, this is not relevant for this lot 2, or not even for this grant scheme, but I think it's very simple for you to understand how you should focus and how you should define your goals or the indicators achievement of the goals. So you should not focus on the activities, for example, writing weekly sales report, but you should focus on the increase of sales by 10%. So you need to define the measurement of the achievement, not the activity, not to focus on the activity by itself. Then instead of activity handling customer complaints and other problems, it should be good to define a reduction of customer turnover by 15%, for example. Then meeting weekly to discuss new product development project. The goal would be launch 5 new products this year. Also, activity would be participating in quality control training program. So you're just, participating on the training program. But on the other hand, the goal would be cut production waste by 20%. So that is the product of those activities performed. Okay, this table also puts in comparison those two approaches. So the focus is on activities and versus results in results-based management. In activity-based approach, you should enhance, it was focused to enhancing programs and proposal design. But here in the result-based approach, you should focus on institutional accountability, effectiveness, and efficacy. Previous approach needed the gathering of information about achievement of results at any level of the log frame matrix, so on the level of outputs, outcomes, purpose, and overall objectives. And the result-based approach is focusing on reporting and corrective action established by assessing actual results versus planned results. So you are measuring achievement of your planned results by monitoring of your actual results achievement. And the focus is now on performance reporting system, and previously it was on activities reporting system. Just to show you what are results in the context of grants. So we have impact, which is the overall objective. You should certainly contribute to this achievement of this impact, even though on your soul level, you will not be able to achieve the impact, but you can contribute to it. On the level of lots, you have specific objectives, outcomes, and outputs, or the results of your activities. So each activity will probably lead to achievement of some outputs, and all of them will lead to the achievement of the results. Log frame approach, so focusing on the results. It's a result-based management tool, which is used for systematic planning, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating projects or programs. So you first prepare the log frame matrix in order to have good planning, and later on the basis of the same matrix, you will be implementing and monitoring the achievement, the level of achievement during the project implementation, and later on after the project will be finished. The evaluation will be done on the basis of the log frame matrix. So please take into consideration that it is really, really important to prepare and to draft good quality a logical framework matrix, that you combine all the elements properly in order that you can basically summarize what is important and relevant in the concept note stage. So the features of log frame approach are results oriented, not activity driven. Also systematically, logically sets objectives and their causal relationships. The log frame shows whether objectives have been achieved through indicators, measurement of achievement of indicators, and describes external factors that influence the project's success, which are assumptions and risks. So external factors on which you cannot basically influence. So the main output of the log frame approach is the log frame matrix itself. As I have already showed you, you have a template. Please download it and take a look. On this slide, there are basically some instructions from the template itself. So this table, it captures in a structured way the hierarchy of results and of the action at impact, outcome, and output levels. So the impact, as I already said, it's a long-term expected effect of the action. So you can only contribute to this. The outcomes are the midterm expected effects of the action fulfilling the specific objectives. And the links between each level are as important as the results themselves, which should reflect the intervention logic and consider the theory of change. As I mentioned, this log frame matrix will be used as a reporting tool on the achievement of the results during implementation. There is one column which is called current value, and which is left blank at this stage, even stage second step, when you will have to actually submit it. And this current value will be fulfilled each time when you will have to submit an official report to the contracting authority in order to see, the achievement. For example, you have envisaged to have 5 round tables. And after a certain period of time, when you will have to submit a report, then you will just write in this current value column how many round tables have you held so far, just for the contracting authority and for your own purposes of monitoring to see the level of achievement or to see if your action will be achieved in full, how feasible is that in every certain period of time. Okay, so these are some explanations for this intervention logic. So basically, how to approach it. You just try to take a look at these materials when you will start preparing the log frame matrix. So maybe it will help you a bit in the preparation. So you have these columns here on the left. First, there are results. So these are the services to be delivered to the intended beneficiaries, so target groups. You will need to establish indicators or measures to verify to what extent the results are produced. And you will need to define the sources of verification. What does it mean? On each level, you will have to propose data sources where this information can be checked officially. So either on some documents, basically some reports, maybe even national reports, or in some documents which will be produced or exist within the scope of your project. So it will really depend on the level, which data sources will have to be consulted in order to check if these indicators are really achieved as such. Then we have the level of the project purpose, which are benefits to be received by the project beneficiaries or target groups. So these are the benefits. First, we had services or results. And again, we have measures to verify to what extent the project purpose is fulfilled and some data sources for indicators. And on the level of the overall objective is the longer term benefits to beneficiaries and wider benefits to other groups. Again, you need to propose measures to verify to what extent the overall objective is fulfilled and data sources. You will have to, as I said, define assumptions. So these are the important events, conditions, or decisions outside the control of the project, which must prevail for the overall objective to be attained. Okay, so this is the results chain, like shown you in illustrative way. So, as I said, the outcomes are intermediate effects on the target groups and systems, so medium term. Then you have impact, which is widespread improvement in society sector, which is long term. So impact is long term, outcomes are medium term. And short term, you will deliver outputs, which are products and services delivered through the activities, which are tasks transforming inputs to outputs, and inputs, which means that which financial, human, and material resources you have been using in order to perform the activities and to achieve the outputs and the results. This is an extract from the DGNIR guidelines, which is basically a simplified description of the results chain. So please consider and take into account these materials that are provided here in the presentation, to help you in preparation of this log frame matrix. Even as I said, even now, you don't have to submit it, but all the important elements that should follow this intervention logic will have to be in brief presented in the concept note. So don't present something that you will not be able to present later on in this table when you will have to submit it in the second step. So take into account all that is relevant for the proper preparation of this log frame matrix. Okay, so this is also a bit illustrative. So what is important here to stress that the intervention logic summarizes the pathway to change. And you need to consider that you will not be able to control or to influence all the levels at the same way. So the attribution will be considered where possible to identify the results which are directly linked to EU support. EU opts for sure for a contribution approach. So you should contribute and basically contribute to the impact of the intervention. And that's basically that. So for the global and specific objectives, so the global objective will not be achieved by the project alone, but will require the impacts of the other programs and projects as well. So this is basically the global objective of the whole grant scheme. Grant scheme is also powered by some other initiatives, and it is all programmed, and it has basically the purpose of the achievement of EU policies on the higher level. But basically every participant here is important, so every grant beneficiary will be important in the achievement of the global objective, but you will be able only to basically to contribute to it. what you have to ask yourself for the specific objectives, why this project is needed to the beneficiaries. Objective that is to be achieved as a result of the project implementation. It is defined as a benefit to the target groups. Ideally, to have only one specific objective. So we had this question. You can have more, you can address more, but basically it will be good to focus. Would be good to focus on one specific objective, not to artificially try to address more of them in order to achieve more higher scores, as my colleague Alexander has explained. So the specific objectives defines the project success at the end, and a clear distinction should be made between the specific objective and the results. Specific objective and the assumptions should be in the same row should lead to the global objectives. So you need to follow this intervention logic. I'm quite sure for the ones who have previous experience that are already well informed about this intervention logic. But anyhow, if you will need support for the preparation or for some consultations from our side, you will be able to contact GST project through the help desk. At the end of the presentation, we have an email address. So certainly for the ones who are less experienced, they will be able to receive some support, not basically drafting for you, but guiding you how to successfully address it and prepare it. Okay. Here are also some questions when you can use for the preparation of the log frame matrix. What you want to achieve, why you want to achieve that, how will you be able, which inputs are needed, and what else needs to be considered. These are the assumptions and risks for sure. Okay, so we have this short video related to problem tree analysis technique. So I suggest we watch it jointly. Just 1 second to share it. Okay. I hope you can
first of our
see.
7-step M&E plan is identifying the problem and the need for a project. Before we begin to conceptualize a project, it is essential to understand the underlying problem in the community of interest and explore what's causing it. What interventions could solve it, and how long the intervention would need to last for it to be effective. The project will thus be designed accordingly. There are many strategic ways to identify the focal problem and its causes, but one common way organizations define these are through a problem tree analysis. This is a group activity that involves input from project team members, stakeholders, and beneficiaries who can contribute relevant technical and local knowledge. The first activity involves defining the main problem that all team members mutually agree upon and visualize it on a flip chart or a whiteboard as the trunk of a tree. Next, through many rounds of dialogues and discussions, the team identifies the causes of the problem and visualize them as the roots of the tree. Finally, the team brainstorms on the potential
Okay, sorry. Sorry if there were no sound. But anyhow, I invite you to take a look by yourself on this interesting video, and you can also find maybe some other relevant materials also online, basically to try to do the self coaching, to bring you closer to this problem tree analysis technique, which is very relevant for the logical framework development. Okay, just to see, to share the presentation again. Okay. Okay, so you are invited still to ask a question if you have some questions. Okay, so here is one result chain example. So basically the overall objective is that one from the grant scheme that you referred to. So it's to contribute to the generation of knowledge and evidence that is relevant for the reunification of Cyprus. Then on the level of specific objectives, it is basically a recommendation to have maximum 3 specific objectives, and you should include some indicators that should refer to these specific objectives, and especially on the level of outputs. So each specific objectives, if you're referring to more of them, will be divided, the enumeration should be divided, as you can see on the screen, just to see which outputs are contributing to which specific objective. With regards to types of outcomes, they can involve different types of changes, like changes in perceptions, in attitudes, feelings, belief, or values. Also changes of knowledge, skills, or level of functioning, behaviors or practices, conditions, some conditions, status, such as socioeconomic status and status that can reflect formal or informal status, or policies. So these are the types of outcomes that basically involve a change. So you need to take into consideration that you need to make a change and contribute. With regards to assumptions and risks, there are some key concepts, but I already mentioned what are the assumptions, but let's go through it briefly. So these are the necessary conditions for the actual achievement of the desired changes. Some preconditions that needs to be in place in order for you to achieve this change. Or to achieve the results of your project. They are basically less probable on the higher level of the intervention logic, so on the level of overall objective, for example, mainly because they are out of your sphere of control. With regards to risks, these are the factors that might hinder the achievement of results, as I said at the beginning. And they are basically also out of the intervention sphere of control. So you cannot control the risk as such, if they will occur or not, but you need to establish the procedures or the proposals and activities that you will, and measures that you will take if such risk occur. So you need to be you need to think widely what can basically hinder your achievement of your result, what can prevent you in achievement of your results. and it's not in the sphere of your control. Okay, so now we are moving on to the stakeholder approach and stakeholder analysis. So what are stakeholders? These are basically any person or group or organization who can be positively or negatively impacted by the actions or activities that you're proposing. Or they can cause an impact on the activities and actions that you're proposing. So it's not only positive impact, it can be even a negative impact of your activities and action as such. You should identify those stakeholders. You need to analyze them and you need to engage them and manage within any project. So you need to be aware of the stakeholders. So the person, groups, or organization who can be positively or negatively impacted by the action, or that who can cause an impact on your action. Aim of the stakeholder analysis is to identify the stakeholders and assess how they are likely to be impacted by the project. The goal of the stakeholder analysis is to develop cooperation between the stakeholder and the project team, and ultimately to assure successful outcomes for the project. So you need to identify your stakeholders within the scope of your project. You need to show that you understand who are your stakeholders, that you have involved them, that you have even consulted them. It is basically a recommendation even to consult the stakeholders. Okay, so this is also illustrative example who could be your stakeholders. So managers, donors, different providers, regulators, research owners, strategic partners, or wider some communities, interest groups, press, media, local authorities, and NGOs. But this is just for you to, to see how wide it can be, the stakeholder analysis. You should do the effective stakeholder involvement. So the stakeholder engagement and stakeholder management are important ingredients for successful project delivery. But sometimes, you don't pay a lot of attention to it. So that's why it is even evaluated in your concept note. It is one of the elements that will be evaluated, this stakeholder analysis. So it is considered to be very important and should be treated as potential sources of risk and opportunity within the project. So it depends on if it's negatively affected or positively affected. So it can be risk, or on the other hand, it can be also an opportunity within the project. Anyhow, you should take it into consideration. Okay, with regards to partnership terminology, we have the coordinator, which is basically now the lead applicant submitting the project proposal or the concept note at this stage, which later on becomes the coordinator after the contract signature. He is the one responsible for the management of the project in the name of all co-applicants, affiliated entities, partners, subcontractors, and such. And he's the only one, he's basically the contract signature from the side of the beneficiaries, grant beneficiaries, and signing the contract with the contracting authority. So take care, if you want to be lead applicant, that later on the responsibility of management, implementation, communication with the contracting authority, collecting of supporting documents, preparing, submitting the reports, collecting information from your partners, co-applicants, you know, it will be rely on you. So co-applicants become co-beneficiaries after the grant contract signature, and they implement jointly with the coordinator the action. Affiliated entities, on the other hand, are not identified as grant beneficiaries later on, and also associates. Okay, so with regards to partnership roles, I already mentioned that the term beneficiaries refers collectively to all grant beneficiaries of the action after the grant contract signature. So this is the lead beneficiary or the coordinator and partners, which are co-beneficiaries. All grant beneficiaries are jointly responsible that the action is carried out. So with for the implementation of the activities. So each of you will have responsibilities to implement certain set of activities in line with the description of the action, which will be proposed in more details in the second stage in the full application form. But the financial responsibility vis-a-vis the contracting authority for the implementation rests with the coordinator. So the coordinator or the lead applicant now will be the one responsible for the financial part. That means collection of data, information, documentation from the side of the co-beneficiaries, and basically it turns out to be very important at a certain stage. So you need to be aware of that now. Okay, some implications for the concept note development. I mentioned that this partnership and stakeholder management are important because they will be evaluated. So the mechanism dealing with these issues shall be integrated in the project design already in this stage. On the other hand, apart from the stakeholders, we have these terms which are final beneficiaries and target groups. So the target groups are groups or entities who will directly benefit from the action at the action purpose level. So these are the target groups. And the final beneficiaries are those who will benefit from the action in the long term at the level of the society or sector at large. So target groups are basically the main beneficiaries who will benefit from the action, and to whom you are referring to. And the final beneficiaries are wider on the level of the society or sector, and they will also benefit from the action in the long term. So in the concept note already, you need to define stakeholders, but you need to define target groups and final beneficiaries. You need to describe their needs and constraints and explain the relevance of your proposal. So how your proposal, your action, and your activities will address the needs and constraints. And you need to present any participatory process that you have ensured the participation, because you need the participation. That is why your action basically exists, to have an influence on the target groups and to have a longer term influence on the final beneficiaries. So you need to explain that in brief in the concept note already. It is very, very important in all the EU projects to have this component of sustainability. So basically, after this project ends, and when you will not be able to receive any more funding from the EU or other donors for this action that you have proposed, it is really not possible just to say, okay, we don't have any more money and now we will not continue with our action and all that we have achieved, all the results, for example, some equipment that we have bought, we cannot maintain it, we don't have money for maintenance, and we will close down our doors. So no, of course, you need to be ensure sustainability of the project results, even after the project ends, even after the financing of the EU ends. So please take that into consideration also when you are proposing the activities and when you are proposing, when you will propose in more details in the budget, what will be financed, that you will have to, for example, if you will prepare, if you will finance preparation of the web page for your project, or you know, something that will be relevant for your activities, to promote, to you know, to inform the public, then you will have to ensure the maintenance of this web page even when the project ends. You can include, for example, the cost of maintenance of such web page during the life span of your project, so 12 to 36 months, depending on what you would suggest for the duration of the project, but you need to ensure it from your own resources later on. This is a checklist with some questions. What means to be sustainable, which those questions you can ask yourself. Do grant beneficiaries, lead applicant, co-applicants, possess the necessary resources and logistics to continue implementing the activities after EU funding is over? Will there be sufficient funds available to implement the required services or activities or contracts under the project? We need to have sufficient available funds to implement everything that you have proposed. Will outputs under the projects, such as training, studies, or policy papers, remain available for the interested public after the project ends? Have you clearly identified the responsibility for post-implementation operation and maintenance of the services or activities or contracts? So you need to be responsible for the maintenance, for the post-implementation handling of your project, basically. Is the cooperation between the grant beneficiaries likely to continue after the project? So you will have to explain how will you ensure the cooperation between the applicant and co-applicant even after the project ends. And have you made sure that your project is environmentally friendly? So you should also take that into account. With regards to the design of the action planning, so when you are planning the duration, here is some illustrative example that can help you. But I would like to stress here that is better for you, what is recommended, that is better for you to envisage a bit longer duration of activities than the exact ones that you envisage, for which you will envisage the duration. Because now you are basically in the process of the preparation of the concept note. In line with the indicative timetable, which is available at the very end of the guidelines for applicants, the planned contract signature and basically start of the implementation of your projects, which now you start thinking of them, will be at least in 1 year's time, maybe even more. There are some dates there, or month, to be more precise. It's envisaged to start in April next year, but it can be a bit earlier or it can be a bit later, depending on the number of proposals that will be received. So we have another 2 steps for the evaluation, so step 2 and step 3. We will go through that also to this process tomorrow, how it looks, for you to know what waits for you. But you know, try to think not only for the duration, but also for all other activities. Try to think in a sense that you will start implementing this if you will pass all 3 steps, and if you will be in a position to sign the grant contract. You need to take into consideration that the implementation will start earliest in spring next year. What I would advise you for sure to add additional months into duration of initial envisaged duration of the implementation. Of course, you should not go beyond 36 months. But anyhow, if you, for example, envisage that your project is not with a higher value and you don't have capacities for, you know, for a larger set of activities, and you have a smaller project that lasts 12 months. And I would advise you to add additional 1, 2, or even 3 months in the initial planning, because if something goes wrong, you will have to explain in more, you know, and justify and explain in more details why you haven't been able, you know, to implement your action within the set time frame, which will become part of your grant contract. So it will become the contract obligation. There will be some possibilities to even to extend, if there are justified reasons, even to extend the implementation of your project, but it takes some time and it involves, you know, some specific procedures that need to be followed. So it will be much better for you to envisage the exact timing, but to add additional months just in order to, you know, to allow yourself to be more flexible during implementation if something goes wrong. You should take also into account that you will have to prepare for procurement of services or supplies. You will have to prepare the tender dossier. So you will have to prepare the documents for the procurement that will be shared with the potential selected candidates. And there are some obligatory tendering periods. For smaller amount, it's 10 days for the submission of proposals. For bigger amounts, it's 30 days for the submission of proposals. And then you will have to proceed with the evaluation of the offers that you will receive, and then to sign the contract. So in some cases, it could take even a couple of months. So if you will propose that you will procure some services and equipment, take into consideration that you will have to go through this process of selection, which in certain way can also take more of your time than envisaged. Because maybe sometimes it can happen that your procedure is not successfully done, and then you need to repeat the procedure again. So try to, you know, to take all that into consideration. Okay, let's see, because we have now.
Yes, if I may just add, thank you, Ivana, for this. I would like to invite you again to, you know, if you have any questions, please try to use this chat to write down any questions. We prepared, in order to encourage individual learning, we prepared a kind of like a short quiz for you, for the participants, for the attendees. So I would kindly ask our Zoom operators if they can share the link. Just go to chat and open this link, please, if that's possible, and that should lead you to a brief quiz questions are translated in all languages. When you click the answer, just go to the end and click submit. And then you will be able to see whether you've actually, you know, like got the answers correctly or not. Yeah, just a little bit of the self-learning. Some of the questions are related also to some parts that are going to be discussed at later stage today and tomorrow, but it's just an individual learning exercise that we wanted you to, you know, like encourage you to do a little bit of self-learning and self-checking. I think that we can have 15 minutes for this quiz. Read the questions carefully. We will not be able to see your individual answers, just collective answers. It also gives us a little bit of an understanding if there are any, you know, like issues that we need to discuss further. There are 15 questions, so yeah, we can start with the quiz now, and then let's get back here at 12:45 if that's fine with you. Thanks.
Okay, I hope we can move on with the third session we have today. So I hope you have managed to complete the quiz, that most of your answers were correct. If not, you have immediately was in a position to see the result and to see if you have got it right, everything. So I think it was useful also for you. And yes, if we don't have questions, maybe we can, maybe we have something.
Yeah, we've received the results of the short
We have the
quiz.
results,
Let's
good.
just go to see. I mean, very good. Correct answer for question number 1, all correct answers for question number 2 and 3. In 4, we have one wrong answer about the minimum and maximum percentage of total eligible costs. So let's focus on that while we are discussing the budget a little bit more, maybe. Also try to check the guidelines and see if there is anything that you need to understand there a little bit better in terms of this maximum and minimum. Question number 5, excellent result as well. Question number 6, can a natural person apply as an applicant for lot 2? The correct answer is no. We are receiving natural persons, individuals, applications from natural persons only in lot 1, not in lot 2. And then also correct answer on question number 7. On question number 18, are potential types of action detailed in guidelines for applicants exhaustive list? No, they are not. They are only there to inspire you a little bit. But they are not exhaustive lists. Also question number 9. Listed ineligible actions, there are certain thresholds that should not be surpassed. Infrastructure, supplies, a little bit of wrong answers here, so please also check that. And also in question number 10 and in question number 11, as we can see here, there is a little bit of misunderstanding. So we will focus also on the question of volunteers and costs for the volunteers when it comes to budgeting. Results in terms of log frame. Also, please check your guidelines again to understand a little bit the difference between impact and outcomes, as that seems to be something that requires further support. Can partners, affiliated entities also be contractors or subcontracted under the procurement procedure? The answer here is no. So please also all attendees just also try to check these results. But all in all, very good results. I congratulate you. We can share as well the results with you, and you can always revisit this test To do it once again, if you want to, we will keep it open in this Microsoft Forms for, like maybe a week or two, so that if you want to revisit, if you want to check your knowledge once again, it's always possible. We will now continue with the part that deals with financial matters, budgeting. You are not supposed to send a full budget at this stage of the proposal. You're only sending an indicative amount that you are requesting. We will go through that, but still there are some important elements in budgeting that you should look into even at this stage of proposal preparation. Thank you, and we can then proceed with the part on the financial matters. Thanks.
Good, thank you, Alexandra, so much for presenting the results of the test. I must say that I'm satisfied. It seems that more or less you got the clear picture about those basic issues and points that were tackled by each question. But nevertheless, we will certainly deal with that later on. So we have a budgeting now. About some general remarks. As Alexandra has mentioned, you are not requested to submit a budget at the concept note stage, but you need to have an indication of how much does your project cost. And in that sense, it would be good even to have a fulfilled, or at least to have a clear picture how this budget will have to look. So I advise you to download this annex for the budget in Excel, where you have 3 sheets. And just for you to see, and maybe to easy your calculations in a certain way. So you should not have major changes from the concept note to the full application stage with regards to designing of the action. You should not overpromise, as I already mentioned earlier, stressed that it is better not to overestimate your own capacities and not to be too eager to present as many activities as possible, to cover as many priorities as possible. Try to focus, to make it simple and to be achievable. Your project needs to be achievable, because if you will be selected, you will actually have to implement it in line with all the rules which are stipulated in the grant contract. So you should propose a realistic and cost-effective budget, which is related to implementation of planned activities without intention to gain profit. So in EU-funded projects, grants, I think it's very well familiar to all of you that you should not gain any profit. That is why one of the requirements for eligibility is to be non-profit making. So you should not gain any profit. So try to have a realistic budget, try to connect it with the activities that you will actually be implemented, because it will be measured also and evaluated in the later stage in the concept note, in the full application stage. So I said the total budget should reflect both the costs to be covered by the EU grant, EU contribution, and from your co-financing. So when you're thinking about the project and the budget for the project, you should think about the project as an overall term. It's not like, okay, I will pay for this and the EU will pay for this cost. No, it will be all under the same budget, and the percentage that you will ask for the co-financing from the EU part, which is between 5%, for your contribution is between 5% to 40%, and from the EU contribution, you can ask from 60 to 95%, but of the overall cost of the whole project. So you are basically not asking to finance some certain activities that you will distinguish. It will be calculated on the basis of the total eligible cost and the percentage of EU financing which will be part of your grant contract. So you can co-finance from your own resources, like self-financing or other donors' funds, if you respect all the other rules for that. You could be income generated by the action, and financial or in-kind contributions from third parties could be provided. So please take note that you can further co-finance a part of the action. So the part of co-financing up to 50% can be accepted from the form of volunteers work, as I have explained earlier in earlier slides. And with regards to co-financing, you should observe this section 639 of Prague, which is available on this web page. So for Prague is practical guide for the EU contract procedures, where there is a grant part and where you can find additional information with regards to different topics that you might be interested in. These are some terms which we will go through them later on, but these are the terms that are in consideration with the budget used under grants. So for the budget, what is important to stress that there are different budget headings, and under different budget headings, there are budget lines. So you will have to identify which cost should be under which budget heading. So the first one is related to the human resources. What does this mean? So the human resources are the staff assigned to the action. So the project team, basically a project manager, project coordinator, maybe project manager or project coordinator from the side of your partner, or basically co-applicant institution. And it will be very valuable to have a person dedicated, or if you have more partners, even to have a person dedicated from their side to participate as a member of the project team. And the cost of their actual gross salaries, gross mean that they include social security charges and other remuneration related costs, excluding performance-based bonuses, will be acceptable to be financed from this action, from this budget, grant budget. So basically what is important here, that your staff or the staff of your partner can be eligible, their salary, gross salary can be eligible for financing if they are working on the implementation of the activities from the coordinative or management part of side, or also working as an expert, because if you have some expertise within your or your institutions of co-applicants, it is possible to to assign this staff to work on the project full-time or usually part of their working hours, such as 50% or 70%, depending on the needs and depending on the task that those staff will cover under this project. But no bonuses, no overtime work is eligible to be financed, so only their regular actual gross salary. Why I say actual gross salary? Because it will have to be proved with a salary statement or salary payslip. It will be supported by the usually employment contract with this staff. Those staff will be appointed as a part of the project team. Their role will be indicated as well, and you will have to provide also the proof of payment of their salaries, as well as for the social security charges and other remuneration costs, because it is obliged by the law. And national legislation as such needs to be always respected for you to prove that your costs are eligible. So you will probably have to submit also the bank statements where you will prove for each salary that it has been paid. It is important to stress that the salaries and related costs shall not exceed the ones which are normally borne by the beneficiary. So your regular salary will not be artificially increased only because you have received this grant contract. So you will be asked for sure prior to the contract signature during the budget clearing, so-called budget clearing process, to show most probably for example, last 3 salary pay slips for the staff that you're assigning to the action in order to calculate their average gross salary that will be reimbursed at the end on the basis of the actual costs that have incurred. So under these human resources, there are also per diems, which are calculated also on the basis of the actual costs. So the staff that are traveling to certain events or some project activities, and they will have to be, they include also per diems or subsistence allowance. It will be budgeted also under budget heading 1 and covered from this grant budget. Okay, then we have the second budget line, which is related to travel, equipment, and local office costs. So you need to separate for the budget heading 2, you need to separate international and local travel. So for the international travel, probably it will be an airplane ticket or something similar, but for the local travel, most probably you will use either your own car or your organization car, and then depending on the number of kilometers that you plan to pass during the lifetime of one project, which is sometimes very hard to envisage. But for example, for the operational meetings of the team, when you will have to travel, you need to envisage how many times per month, for example, you will meet, and then do the calculation of the distance between these areas. You can use via Michelin or some other similar web page to calculate the distance, and then to envisage, how much you will have to pay for the travel cost. Also for the airplane tickets, you can take a look, either on the web pages, because you will have to show, you will have to present later on in the justification of the budget. You will have to present not only to which activities you can connect these costs, but also we have to present how have you calculated the proposed cost that will be part of the budget. So all these proposed costs are not actual costs. The actual costs will be calculated when they will incur during the implementation. Then you have for the equipment, it is budget heading 3. If you will envisage such costs for equipment, we mentioned earlier that it is up to 30% of the total eligible costs for lot 2. You will certainly have to see and to justify that this equipment is will be purchased for the purposes of the implementation of the action, and the ownership will have to be transferred at the later stage after the grant contract ends, in line with this article of general conditions. So you should consult also the general conditions. So it is in that package where you have annexes to future grant contract. General conditions are basically the ruler of the implementation. All provisions are very relevant, and one of these is this transfer of ownership of equipment. Then we have a local office, which is budget heading 4. You are allowed to ask renting costs of the project office if the project office is foreseen, if it is duly justified and described in the description of the action and in special conditions. So for sure, if you're implementing more projects or if your organization has some other activities apart from the project, of course, that not the whole rent amount could be eligible for financing, but only like a percentage, calculating either on the basis of the number of staff that will participate on the project, also taking into account the percentage of work. So you need to try to justify and to calculate one part of this office rent that could be covered through this project, artificially saying, okay, since this project will be, implementing in this duration of, for example, 2 years, and this staff will participate 50% of their working hours, and you will try to calculate equivalently how it will reflect to the rent. But it is not obligatory. You can, if you're renting and paying, and if you don't want to ask for these resources to be covered from the grant, you are not obliged to ask. It is only a possibility. And then you have the cost of consumables. So basically, it's not coffee, tea, but it's more like papers, pens, and other costs that are relevant, or printing or something like that, or for running of the office. And for the budget heading 5, we have these other costs and services, which are cost of service, supply, and works contracts, which are awarded by the beneficiaries for the purposes of the action. These are costs that are actually directly deriving from the requirements of the contract. For example, dissemination of information. So you collect some information, you want to disseminate it, and you can envisage a cost for that. Maybe for the evaluation of the action. So if you want at the end of the project to evaluate the success of your action, you can envisage such evaluation costs for the external service provider. So-called expenditure verification, which needs to be done for the grant EU contribution part, which is about 100,000 euros. So it is applicable for row 2 and 3 because your EU contribution part of the budget can be proposed up to 200,000 euros, and the obligation for this expenditure verification. So it's basically the audit of your finances and supporting documents. It's obligatory by the general conditions for the contracts that are above 100,000 euros grant part. Then for some translation services, reproduction, insurance, or similar. Here, financial service cost could be included. The cost of transfers and financial guarantees were required according to the contract. And of course, all these costs need to strictly abide to the non-eligibility of costs, the list of non-eligibility of costs. So you should take a look in this list in order to see if these costs that you're proposing are eligible for financing or not. And usually, since visibility is one very important component, you should envisage costs for the communication and the visibility activities. Of course, they should be properly planned and budgeted in order to be eligible later on. So try to envisage as many as possible and relevant to your action visibility activities, and then properly budget. Okay, then after these budget headings, we have a provision of indirect costs. These costs are not directly connected with the implementation of certain activities, because all these costs that are directly related to the implementation of project activities should be envisaged in either in budget heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But those indirect costs occur indirectly. So it's usually, even here, part of the financing of your project office can be envisaged. Then maintenance, electricity bills and everything that you need to pay. Also printing, depending on the needs. So these are some indirect costs that are eligible only in case that they are not already envisaged in another budget heading. So for example, if you're asking for office rent, then you should certainly have this percentage, which is maximum 7% for the indirect costs, should be lowered, because it is obvious that you will cover most of these indirect costs through, for example, budget heading 4 for local office rent and maintenance and things like that. So percentage of for the indirect costs of the total estimated eligible direct cost is 7%, up to 7%, but it can be 1, it can be 2%, 3, 4. It really depends, but you will probably be asked to justify this percentage, how you have calculated this percentage before the grant contract signature. Okay, I also already explained which are the indirect costs. So they are incurred by the beneficiaries in connection with the eligible direct cost, but they cannot include ineligible costs. Regards to some important issues, so you should be aware that the reports should be written in English, because the language of the call is English. And also in the reporting phase, you will probably be asked to translate some documentation that are not in English. So you should just be aware of that. So if you don't have such capacities, maybe even to envisage some translation services under budget heading 5. So it will be covered through that contracts, external contracts with external experts, not your own staff for sure, and the staff of your partners or affiliated entities. This is basically it for the external experts. They should be budgeted under budget heading 5, and you should not contract your partners, associates, or affiliated entities under the project, because you are simply applying, as a team, and you can, of course, be reimbursed for the cost of the salaries of the team, but only through budget heading 1. So you cannot procure your own staff, throughout this tool for procurement, and because it is dedicated and envisaged only for the external expertise that you either don't have within your organization or your partner organization, or maybe you have staff, but they don't have capacities, they are fully booked. So it is allowed really, the ownership of the project should stay with you. So you should have a project manager, most probably even the project coordinator and financial manager for sure. But you can have a procurement expert within your staff, and part of his salary can be eligible for financing for his dedication to procurement activities under the project. But if you don't have procurement expert within your organization, then it is even allowed to have such services procured, but under budget heading 5 with exclusively external experts or companies even. Okay, for the contingency cost, so this is contingency reserve, so-called for some costs that could, occur in line with some force majeure. It can be really used only in some exceptional cases, and also needs to be justified, and pre-approval from the contracting authority have to be gained in order to use these funds. So this is a contingency reserve, but I said only in case of force majeure, not just because you don't have enough money for some activities, it is not eligible in that sense. So you need to try to envisage everything that you need already now in this stage, or at the latest at the full application stage, when you will have to present the whole contract. Okay, so this is the list of ineligible costs. So take a look at those. It's not like, yeah, it's a long list, but you should certainly not include these costs into your budget. Okay. Of course, it is all written in the guidelines for applicants as well. And just to repeat once more, so the maximum budget EU part of the co-financing can be 200,000 euros. Minimum is 50,000 euros for some smaller projects. And this is set as maximum for EU contribution to your project, not as the total budget. So your total budget also consists of your own contribution, which should be in minimum 5% of the total project budget. Minimum 5%, maximum 40%. So you can even co-finance your action up to 40%. For example, if you want to finance your action with 50%, you will be administratively non-compliant. I'm sure it will not come to that, but I just want to plastically, explain to you that these thresholds needs to be really considered and strictly followed, because if not, your proposal concept note is administratively non-compliant. These are the eligibility rules. Okay, even though you're presenting only an estimate of your budget, bear in mind that the contribution at full application stage may not vary from the initial one, from the concept note estimate, by more than 20%. So basically, we will have an example later on, but okay, there are some possibilities, to be flexible when you are proposing the budget now and preparing the actual budget and proposing the exact final amount in the full application stage, but that should not vary by more than 20%. So you're kind of limited with this. So this is an example. What is this 20% change? For example, in the concept note phase, you propose that the total eligible cost for your whole action are 77,000 euros. Then you say, okay, from the EU contribution side, I ask 60,000 euros. Now in the concept note phase, and that is basically 78% from the EU side and 22% from your own co-financing, and it is in line with this threshold. In the full application phase, we have an example which is correct. You, for example, consider that that you don't need 77,000. When you made more detailed calculations, did market study, for the prices of the equipment, for example, that you want to procure, and you have established that you need 70,000 euros for the total budget for the implementation of all the activities, and you still ask for EU contribution to be 60,000, like in the concept note phase. But that means that you have reduced basically your own co-financing to 14%. But that is still okay. You're still in line with this threshold. And then we have this last example where you basically ask more money, but you also ask the higher EU contribution than the initial one, and you just fail in the administrative phase because your co-financing is at the end less than 4%, which is not in line and is not allowed. So take into consideration all these amounts and percentages, because it can be really tricky, so you need to calculate it very carefully. Okay, we already passed through this short quiz. Maybe for the last question, that was this 20% change that is possible from the concept note to the full application stage for the budget, was not answered very well, because this was something that was explained right now. Okay, so that would be it from our side today, except for the session for questions and answers. So I hope you did have some questions. If not too many, then it means that the presentation was quite clear. At least I hope so. And tomorrow we will have another 2 sessions, and at the end you will have all the information how you can contact us to help desk, and in order to further support you.
Yes, thank you, Ivana. Let's answer the questions that we received during the presentation. I will try to share them on the screen so that you can see. We didn't receive a lot of questions, but we received some. Question number 3, in case that the lead partner is Greek Cypriot and the equipment will be bought for the Turkish Cypriot community, where should the procurement take place? I would kindly ask my colleague Nilay perhaps to give you a little bit of an answer here.
Hello everybody. Well, actually, this is a very, to answer this properly, I need to give you a very detailed answer, which actually exceeds the limits of this training today. It is more related to implementation. So just to briefly guide you, if the lead applicant is based in the Republic of Cyprus, either the procurement can be done there and with the relevant law, if that particular equipment, because we also don't know what the equipment is, if that particular equipment can be transferred here, it can be transferred. Or another alternative is to share the budget in a way that the expenditure that will incur in the Turkish Cypriot community, that share of the budget can be transferred into the bank account of the co-applicant, and they can undertake the procurement here, or if the equipment will be bought from somewhere else, it can be procured as well. So the lead applicant and the co-applicants, they are expending, their expenditure is equally eligible. Both are partners, applicants, or in the implementation sense, beneficiaries which their expenditure are equally eligible. So they can also make the procurement in the Turkish Cypriot community. Those are the two different ways, and we will further support you during implementation with such questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Nilay. The next question that we received, is there a ceiling for the total costs of items under other cost services heading? No, there's no such ceiling. The only ceiling in terms of the types of costs that you can see in this call relates to infrastructure and purchase of equipment. And then, of course, there are ceilings in relation to the percentage that you can plan as contingency and the percentage of indirect costs that you can plan, but no particular ceiling has been established for the budget heading 6, sorry, other cost services. Question number 5, if we overestimate our costs, kilometers driven or contingency costs, do we return any surplus amount? I mean, in the concept note compared to the actual costs later. In the concept note, what you're now suggesting, what you're now indicating is an indicative budget that you will be needing for this project. And you are indicating the amount of money that you are asking EU for, and you are indicating the amount of money that you will contribute with to this particular project. If you are invited then to submit full application form at later stage, you are going to be asked to submit full budget. There is a possibility that while you were preparing your concept notes, you weren't really looking into all the details, and now all of a sudden when you are invited to submit full application form, you see that maybe you will need less money or more money than you originally indicated in the concept note stage. That is possible. The amount can vary, but it is limited to minus or plus 20% of grant. So, I mean, if you are invited to submit full application form, we will have similar trainings and Q&A sessions. So that is going to be fully explained to you. All the costs need to be accounted for at the end of the project, and during the project, you are submitting reports. They need to be substantiated by supporting documents. So, I mean, you cannot earn as a result of the grant money. You cannot profit as a result of the grant money. And in the event that, for example, you requested 100,000 euros and you didn't really spend 20,000 euros by the end of the project, yes, you will be either asked to return the money, or maybe you will not request the new installment of money to be transferred to you. So the answer to the question is yes, but I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on it. Then there was a question in relation to a specific exchange rate to be used to calculate costs from Turkish lira to euro. I've shared on your chat, I've shared the link to the so-called info-euro exchange rate link. While calculating this, you're using this info-euro. Again, this is really a question for the implementation, but just for you to know, when the funds are transferred between lira and euro, this info-euro is used. And then let's see. There were some additional questions. So the co-applicant can go into procurement. Yes, I mean, both applicant and co-applicant are equally involved in the implementation of the project. You know, maybe you have a lead applicant and a co-applicant in the action, and maybe this lead applicant and the co-applicant have agreed that the co-applicant is going to be procuring some laptops. Lead applicant is going to transfer the funds to the co-applicant, and the co-applicant is going to undertake the procurement procedure as applicable and in line with the applicable rules. And this is quite normal, and this is one of the way of partnership management. If you are applying, and certainly because we have a lot to training today, please discuss with your partners, with your co-applicants, these arrangements, so that, you know, like, you are certain if you are invited to submit full application And then maybe later on you're also awarded a grant, that there is clarity among you in terms of how is this partnership going to be managed financially as well, you know. So that's also something that you should look into. They can undertake procurement, but on the other hand, you cannot procure your co-applicant to provide you a certain services. You cannot, you know, have a situation where your co-applicant, your partner in the project, is at the same time your contractor and provides certain services. Funds can be transferred to partners and you jointly manage this project. Lead applicant's bank account is the one that is used for these transfers, but transfers between the partners can take place. Of course, these transfers are not costs, they are just transfers, and then the partner is going to be spending certain money. I hope that this answers the question. Are there any other questions? I'm looking into chat now just to see if there is anything else that you would like to ask, discuss, react.
It seems not for now.
Okay. Okay. You know, like there's been a lot of information today, I know. At the end of the day, I also have to tell you, this is really not rocket science. At the end of the day, you know, we're trying our best to support you in explaining these guidelines, and there was a lot of info sessions and also this training. But you know, there is also this help desk that we are running, and if you have any additional questions, maybe you don't want to discuss something in front of everyone, we can also help you in that way. This was this training, as the previous trainings, it's being recorded, so there is going to be a recording available. It takes a little bit of time to edit the video and then transfer it to you. We are now going to share the videos from Lot 1 training, and I'm hoping in a couple of days we will also share the video from this current training. There was also one question. Can bank charges for transfers count as a cost? Yes, you will see in the budget that there is a budget line which says financial services, and so these bank provisions, bank charges, they can be included in your budget as a cost. That's eligible. And there was another question also, from what I understand, it is impossible to transfer funds from TCC to Greek Cypriot community and vice versa. So can transfers be done manually? This is a little bit risky. It also includes your obligation to, you know, declare some funds if you're transferring them through the checkpoints. So I mean, we do understand the sensitivity of this entire situation, but we wouldn't advise you to transfer the funds manually, to withdraw cash from bank and then to go to your partner. But certainly we understand that this is a very sensitive issue, and you know, during the implementation, we will try the way to support you to actually implement your projects in a bi-communal context. Any other questions, maybe? Will it be evaluated as a major weakness if two partners have worked successfully under Civil Society in Action 5 or 6 and submit an application together again? Major weakness, I wouldn't really say so. Because if you had cooperated in the past before, and if you managed to, you know, implement a successful partnership and you want to develop this partnership further, it sounds like a common sense that you apply for this call. I know that there is this added value which confuses you a little bit. Yes, we would also like to see, I mean, the donor European Union would also like to see some new applicants, but when you read the evaluation grid, added value is only one question, you know, like if your project is perfect in all other elements, it doesn't disqualify you at all. So just please consider this as an added value. There is absolutely nothing hidden anywhere. Everything is explained in the guidelines. The maximum number of points you can obtain as when this evaluation criteria is assessed is 5, and it's not only the previous co-applicants that had benefited from EU funding, but there are so many other added value elements. So
there are
please
other,
don't
yes,
be
5
so-
elements of added value,
Yes.
so they can contribute to
Yes.
some other ones,
Yes.
not particularly.
please
this one.
don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged from this, like it doesn't say you're going to be disqualified. There is only one element, added value, and then this is going to be addressed during the evaluation, but there are many other elements in the evaluation process as well. Any other questions? This is the last call for questions. As I said, I mean, even if in the meantime you remember something tomorrow, we can discuss all the questions that you perhaps have. Tomorrow we are going to start at 10 as today. If there are any questions that you think of this afternoon or in the evening or during the night, you can write them tomorrow. We can have another Q&A session as required. And tomorrow we are going to start with PADOR and prospect learning session, and then we will continue with the concept note preparation and also assessment process. So these are going, I mean, as in line with the agenda, these are going to be the major topics for tomorrow. Thank you very much for your participation. We wish you a good afternoon and evening, and then see you tomorrow at 10. And as I said, if any questions in the meantime, like think about them and write them down in chat tomorrow, so we will discuss them. Thank you. Have a good day.
Yes, please join us tomorrow. We would like to have another session with you to spend some more time, and maybe even later on through help desk support. So please, yes, join us from the morning. It will be very interesting start with this prospect, with PADOR and prospect guidelines. So yes, join us in the morning, and we will continue replying your questions and hopefully proceed with the successful implementation of the training. Thank you for the compliments. So looking forward to tomorrow.